Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Eddie Hearn has a plan. He has a plan for Anthony Joshua for 2023, talking about momentum, talking about 3 fights for 2023, and one of those being against Deontay Wilder. Also, he's talking about building towards being a 3-time heavyweight champion for Anthony Joshua. So we'll get to his comments and then a few thoughts, because there are some issues with some of what Hearn is saying, but also some things for Joshua to clear up amongst his sort of setup, in particular on the training side. And you have to ask the question, 3 times a year, Anthony Joshua, who's fought once a year for 3 years running, is it realistic? We'll talk about it. So you've got Eddie Hearn talking to the DAZN boxing show, bearing in mind Eddie Hearn is exclusively with his Matchroom stable with DAZN, so too with Anthony Joshua, paying him a boatload of money, including giving him a piece of the company. Hearn says Joshua wants to return with a top 15 guy, then in summer probably versus Dillian Whyte, and then a mega fight with Deontay Wilder. The key is we want him to fight 3 times this year. There's an open line with Shelley Finkel, that's Deontay Wilder's manager. Wilder is going to fight Andy Ruiz. That fight was ordered by the WBC. AJ's probably going to fight the first week of April. When people talk about rebuilding, there's no rebuilding here. We're just looking for momentum. I'm not talking about a fight against someone you've never heard of. I'm talking about a top 15 guy that AJ can fight with a new team, then go on to have a big stadium fight in the summer. I'm not even ruling out fight 2, number 2 of the year, against Deontay Wilder. And then Hearn sums up with some comments. The plan now is to rebuild Joshua to become a 3-time heavyweight world champion. It's all very well being brave, listening to Twitter, going out and fighting Deontay Wilder, but there has to be a plan, a smart plan. There is an important moment we must get right. I truly believe Deontay Wilder or Tyson Fury are nailed on for 2023. They have to be. Joshua wants to be in the biggest fights possible, and he has been for his whole career. Those statements there by Eddie Hearn. So you might have noted earlier in the comments, Hearn said it's not a rebuild, but then later on said they're rebuilding to be a 3-time heavyweight world champion. Make of that what you will. But okay, we'll start with the elephant in the room. Anthony Joshua in 3 fights in a year. We haven't seen that since 2016. So do I think it's likely? No. But there really is nothing impeding Anthony Joshua doing that, apart from Joshua and these long training camps and these big gaps that he has between his fights. He is not holding a heavyweight title. He doesn't have a rematch against an opponent scheduled. Really, the map for 2023 is open. So if they really want to make that work, 3 fights, they could do it. But it just feels, given the inactivity, Joshua just fighting once a year, each year for 3 years, and even then before that, twice a year for a couple of years, that it's just a remote possibility, 3 fights. More likely it's going to be 2, and more likely the second fight will be against Dillian Whyte. I'm not sure that a fight with Deontay Wilder is actually going to occur. One, because if he beats Andy Ruiz Jr. in the WBC final eliminator, then Wilder will be hanging on for his title shot. I'm not sure that he'd be willing to sort of step aside and fight someone else. I think this Wilder and Joshua fight, it's one of these things that's been talked about, but it feels like it may just never happen. And if it does, it'll be right at the tail end of their careers, probably when they're well past their primes, and it'll just be a grab for some cash. It's one of those fights we have always talked about wanting and needing. I'm just not so sure 2023 is going to be it for that fight. But stepping back, so you've got a couple of other sort of associated issues with fighting regularly, because it's possible that he could, but DAZN, who spent a boatload of money to secure Anthony Joshua's services, gave him a piece of the company. They will want, and also financially need, him to do that, because DAZN, as a boxing platform, started out splashing the cash and was trying to sort of take over, get some real good market share, and it just really hasn't quite panned out maybe in the way that they thought it would. They've sort of shed quite a few of the early signings that they once had, paid them a lot of money sometimes for pretty mediocre fights, and you're in a situation now they've put their prices up globally, all around the world. Their subscription fees have gone up after an initial earlier or lower fee, I should say, for a monthly subscription. But are they really delivering? And in the main, I'm not sure that they are. I don't even think they're delivering the number of fight nights that they said they would promise. So they need Anthony Joshua to be their cash cow. He's proven a cash cow in the past. They need him to be a subscriber driver. They need him to be doing pay-per-views, pay-per-view worthy fights, because their business model relies on it now. They need some upward momentum, and Anthony Joshua is one of the biggest names that they have to help achieve that. So for his first fight, they've talked about April. I mean, why 4 months into the year? Why can't it be, late February or March? This is why I sort of think also 3 fights starts to get a bit unrealistic, because then all of a sudden it's 1/3 into the year and Joshua has these breaks between fights and these long camps, 12 weeks, that sort of thing. It just feels like you start so late in April. Are you giving yourself enough runway? But if they are going to have a fight in April and they're talking about a top 15 name, you should probably put that top 15 with inverted commas, because it'll be a top 15 within a sanctioning body. Will it be a legitimate top 15, recognized by fans who know what they're watching, know the fighters, know the sort of machinations of the heavyweight division? I think it'll be more a case, it'll be a guy that is just in a ranking that'll help Joshua's cause. He's already ranked across different sanctioning bodies. It'll help sort of position him. But I don't think it's going to be anyone too tough. But in the same breath, you've got DAZN in the background going, we need a good fight. We need you to help us sell a pay-per-view. You need to be facing someone of a certain level that's actually going to help shift some subscribers, DAZN, pay-per-view, whatever it's going to be in different parts of the world, because it may not be equal. It could be a strict pay-per-view in the UK and other markets. It could be sold off to other broadcasters. Say in New Zealand, most of the DAZN stuff is not actually on DAZN. It's sold off to local broadcasters. So they will be looking for a certain level of fight. And Joshua, because of who he is, a big name, he can't really just have a bang-out tune-up. He has to be fighting someone halfway meaningful, otherwise he'll get sort of pillared. And it's not like he put in an embarrassing performance against Alexander Usyk. He just got outboxed by a better boxer. He had an opportunity in the second fight to try turn things around. He just tried to basically do much of the same thing. It is what it is at this point. He didn't beat Usyk. He has to rebuild, even though Hearn says it's not a rebuild, it's about momentum. But he has to get a win, and he has to look good against whoever he faces first up. Been a lot of talk about Otto Wallin, and if it is Wallin, I think Joshua beats him. I think he actually knocks him out. I think Otto Wallin will start well. He will box well for the first half a dozen rounds, start to tire and get caught. But apart from that, who else could it be? I think it's going to be talents in or around that sort of Otto Wallin sort of level. Guys who are between maybe 15 and 30, but name recognition, sellability is going to come into it. That's why the name of Otto Wallin keeps popping up, because he had that fight against Fury. He did something against Fury, cut him, and arguably it could have ended on cuts in that one. So I think there is some sort of storytelling to come out of a fight with Wallin to try build the comparison between Joshua's performance against Wallin compared to Fury's, even though Fury ultimately went on and cantered to a decision in the end against Wallin. But people sort of forget that. They just remember the gruesome couple of cuts over the eyelid and that Otto Wallin put some hands on Fury at different times in that fight. But people also forget it was a blatant cherry pick. Otto Wallin picked from relative obscurity for Fury to make an 8-figure payday. So it could be something like that. Then you get into a fight like Dillian Whyte. Should he win that one in April? I mean, I think the Whyte fight is going to happen. There's the history, but arguably is the actual rivalry dead? Dillian Whyte has just been sort of clamoring for this fight, and it's clear that he's just after a payday. He's always talked about wanting the rematch, and basically after he's lost his, for the first time in his career, it's all about trying to get a rematch with Joshua. I don't think there's much heat in the rivalry. Joshua ended the rivalry, in my view, when he knocked Dillian Whyte out in 2015. Sure, there was the fight in the amateurs that they had, but did the knockout, did that actually put that to bed? I mean, to me, that sort of screams in one sense that Eddie Hearn's on a little bit of an island at DAZN, and with a lot of the other heavyweights tied up either with Top Rank or at PBC or in the UK with Frank Warren, the opponent selection is a little bit thin. Dillian Whyte is a free agent. He can go wherever he wants, and because there is history, it's probably one of the most makeable, but also Hearn can build and weave some storylines around the pair having a rematch. Although I don't really think there's much hype for a rematch. I just think it's one of these things where they're going to make it because it's a decent and relatively big fight. But I think at this point, Dillian Whyte is looking a bit washed, and I think he's just out for the payday. Joshua, I think, knocks Whyte out again if that fight happens. And a third fight, Deontay Wilder, the talk of that, yeah, I'm not so sure. I'd love it for it to happen, but look, that's 5 years past its due date. These guys should have been fighting in 2018. They almost fought in 2018 for Undisputed, and now they could be fighting 5 years later in a much smaller fight, although still a fight that heavyweight fans for this generation want to see happen because it should have happened. Some of these guys haven't fought each other. These guys have been circling each other. It does need to happen. But does it happen? I'm just not so sure, although I would love for it to happen. So Eddie Hearn's plan seems a little bit ambitious in terms of 3 fights, but there's nothing really stopping that from happening, apart from I think they could just run out of 2023 but to have the third fight. And if you start in April with the first fight, well, you're putting yourself in a bad position in my view. And given Joshua's got a history of 1 fight a year for the past 3 years, all of a sudden ramping it up, I don't know. But the other issue I wanted to raise, well, I guess there's a couple of issues. It's around the training situation. Anthony Joshua has got this weird setup. He has these bespoke camps, got rid of Robert McCracken. Seemingly it was amicable, but effectively pushed him to the side. He brought Angel Fernandez in after the first Ruiz loss, and he stayed in the corner. And then you've had Robert Garcia come in, but it was a weird 1A, 1B with Fernandez still sifting around. I think Joshua actually just has to make a decision, has to have one trainer, but also is he willing to, because there's talk of Derek James, there's talk of Ronnie Shields and other different trainers, but are the top tier trainers going to want to put up with Anthony Joshua making all the demands, saying how it's going to be, saying you're going to work, if you're coming into my camp, coming into my circle, you're going to work with Angel Fernandez. It's just not working. And I think Joshua needs to hand over control if he is going to select another trainer. Otherwise, I think we're not going to really see any further development to any real extent, because Joshua's putting himself in his own bubble that he's created, surrounding himself with the same people that he's been surrounding himself with, except having another voice coming in. It just doesn't feel like it's gelling and working. And as Joshua is seemingly more of a safety-first, defensive type fighter now, doesn't seem to want to get hit, Angel Fernandez is not the answer. So they need to bring someone else in, and it probably needs to be Joshua traveling to that person's gym, not going up to some university, sort of corralling himself for 12 weeks and having his own bubble where he's sort of, ruling his own little fiefdom. I don't know if a number of trainers are really going to want to deal with that. And I think it is an issue, and it's sort of starting to stick out like a sore thumb, and I think it is something that needs to be resolved. What do you make of the training situation? And for DAZN, they're going to be putting the pressure on. They paid a lot of money. They need a result. They need some subscribers. They need that pay-per-view dollar coming through wherever they're putting it in, different markets as a pay-per-view with Joshua. They need a return on their investment. So they're going to be pushing hard for decent names in regular fights. How regular the fights actually happen is anyone's guess, as I've alluded to. But Eddie Hearn, he's got a plan. We'll see how it pans out. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter. Boxing_squared. I'm out.